Hello, everybody. Scott McMeans with Legacy Leaders. I am here today with Andrew Sheridan of Drip Sauna House. Amazing facility. He's about to open up. I want you guys to hear everything that Andrew has to say today because an amazing journey to get him from wherever he started to where he is right now. And where he is right now, pretty cool because this is only one of two in all of North America that has the capabilities, facilities, and services that Drip Sauna House will have. So before we get into all that, I want to turn the microphone and camera over to Andrew so he can tell us a little bit about himself and his story. So Andrew, it is yours. The microphone and camera are now on you.
Hey Scott, thanks a lot for the introduction. So we'll make my circuitous journey in life kind of quick and put it in a nutshell. Andrew Sheridan, originally from Northern Ireland, so I grew up in Europe, moved over to the States in about 2006, been in Cleveland area for about 10 years, and I'm actually a recovering management consultant. So I was management consultant with Deloitte in London for 8 years, or 6 years, 6 years in the States, in the DC area. Worked for a bunch of other management consulting firms. That was my life. That's
Yeah.
all I had done. And then a random accident led me on this journey to build Drip Sauna House.
Okay. Let's I don't want to skip over one thing you said. You are a recovering management consultant. Explain a little bit about what you mean by recovering management consultant.
Sure. So I got into management consulting when I was maybe 22 in London. Didn't understand it, didn't understand why they had an entirely different language set than the rest of the universe. Um, Complete fish out of water. But at some point, I got the bug. I loved fixing problems. That was really
Mhm.
that was consulting for me. It wasn't presenting. It wasn't, wearing shiny suits. It was there's a problem to solve. Can we solve it? I
Yeah.
love that, but there's a lot that comes along with that industry, including a lot of travel, a lot of time away from family, and but it was always something that was so. This kind of leads us back to dripping away, Scott. It was so comfortable, and it's so easy
Mhm.
to gravitate towards comfort, and that's exactly what I did with consulting. So I was with a larger consulting firm about 2 years ago and had a bit of an accident, tore my Achilles,
Yeah.
had a surgical repair. Surgery went well, with the exception of the anesthesia. So I got a nerve blocker that was meant to wear off in about 3 days, and 5 months later, I still couldn't feel my foot. So because I couldn't feel my foot, I couldn't work the muscles properly. So I couldn't really rehab. So every week I was coming out of the Cleveland Clinic on the same street where Drip now resides, on crutches, in a boot, just failing PT. I may be the only person that ever serially failed PT, but it was really hard with the nerve damage. So that started me on a journey of, okay, I'm still in consulting. I can't travel because of the injury, so I can't naturally compete with my peers because I can't go and meet clients
Mhm.
face to face. So pure desperation started me on a journey of trying to find anything that could get me out of this hole that I had dug for myself. And that included, I think at that point, I had gained about 27 pounds in weight because
Mhm.
I couldn't walk, never mind foot.
Exercise. Yeah. How are you going to do that?
Yeah, I wasn't sleeping because of the stress of, hey, how can I do what I've always loved if I can't go meet clients? So yeah, that started the search.
So, pretty interesting story. And the reason why I want to tie these points together, you love fixing problems. You had a rather delicate, devastating problem happened to you with the nerve block not working effectively. And now you're fixing a problem, which is yourself. And I know we talked earlier about this, but I want the audience to understand you kind of went through a self-discovery of what regimen, what treatment, what protocol can I go through to help my foot get back to normal? Because all the rehab wasn't working. The clinic, as good as they are, it just something wasn't working because your foot, the nerves, it just didn't respond. So you investigated and discovered the combination of heat and cold made your foot actually respond better. So I want to talk a little bit about that, but in my head, I'm connecting all these dots, Andrew, and it's interesting that you said what you loved about management consulting was you loved fixing problems. And here we are talking about the problem was your foot, you found a way to fix it, and now you're taking that vision, that journey you went on, and you're creating a means for other people to be fixed, not necessarily physically, but you're giving them the opportunity at Drip Sauna House. They can now fix their own problems. So you've got this really cool character arc. Just an interesting storyline for me. So walk me through how you went from all the challenges of getting over your nerve block to how did you discover that the combination of heat and cold actually worked for you?
Sure, but first of all, Scott, I actually love the way you describe my story because you make a really interesting point. You talk about I love fixing problems, and
Hmm.
really the injury became the problem to solve. I never really thought about it that way, but that's exactly what happened. So
Yeah,
that became the only problem at that time that I needed to solve in my life because otherwise my career was going down the tank. Everything was going sideways.
that's okay. I understand what you're saying, and it's a hard thing for people to listen to, but I want them to realize it's not always the end of the road. The end of the road is just going to divert you in a different direction. And the decisions that you make are the most powerful things that you can do to influence your next chapter. So I love the fact that you were at not necessarily a crossroads. Maybe you would describe it as that, but I'm thinking of it as holy shit, right? You had a real like holy shit moment. All right, what am I going to do? I got to fix my foot, otherwise I can't work. If I can't work but now you've taken this opportunity and discovery to say, I want to help other people solve their problems too. So please go ahead. I love this stuff.
Sure. So, yes, combination of desperation and at that time, not now, unlimited funds, um, took me on a really interesting journey. So when I say I tried everything, I got pretty close to trying everything. So I went from all the typical wellness centers, etc. I tried jet boots. I tried salt caves. I tried flotation tanks. I tried cryotherapy, tried cold plunge, tried infrared sauna, tried hotter traditional Finnish sauna. And long story short, Scott,
So cool.
nothing really did ever anything. A lot of these things were like really interesting. Like they were kind of fun to do. Like cryotherapy was kind of fun to do, but it didn't end up, it didn't move the needle. And heat and cold absolutely moved the needle. And when I say moved the needle, it got to the point where um, probably after a month of a combination of Finnish sauna at about 176 degrees and ice baths or cold plunges, I probably went from, and this is my, you know, ham-fisted estimation, but about 40% feeling in my foot to probably 70, 75. It was
Wow.
profound and it was that quick. So that got me to the point of why. So why did those things work and the other things didn't? So it could be a quirk, right? It's just me, or it was
Outlier. Something crazy, right? Yeah.
exactly. And there are always outliers, even in great, robust clinical studies. There are
Mhm.
always folks that are outliers, just physiologically different, for example. And that's when I discovered the science. So I discovered that there was tremendous science behind Finnish sauna. So to give you an example, the the longest study that I've seen was, of course, out of Finland, from a Professor Jari Laukkanen. That was based on a 20.7 year long study with thousands of participants adjusted for confounding factors. And what that found was a very obvious dose-dependent factor between not just sauna and, say, for example, reduction in the risk of cardiovascular disease, but literally dose-dependent based on the number of times per week the participants actually sauned. So profound difference between
Wow.
1 and 2 to 3 and 4 to 7. So they were able to see, for example, and further studies were based off the same data set, for example, looking at stroke reduction. So if you look at the reduction in the risk of stroke, that was around, I think, 23% for participants that use sauna 2 to 3 times per week versus once. And if they used it 4 times a week or more, it was 61%. And I
Oh,
don't think there's a pill in the world that
I
can
can
do
do
that.
that. No.
So you're taking nothing. It's healing from the inside out. So then it became this journey of, okay, so the science says this. Is there other science that kind of explains
Yeah.
why? And are these just, you know, uh, coincidental modalities that happen to work, or do they have some sort of relationship with each other? And that's where I found uh, many relationships, and then ultimately also connected that with red light therapy, or what is often termed photobiomodulation.
I mean, the body is an amazing thing. And to find out that whatever pill, whatever therapy that was available wasn't giving you the relief and success you're looking for, you went on a really interesting, you learned about it, you discovered it, and now you've applied it to yourself. So where are you now with respect to your foot? Are you at that 70% or is it much better now? How would you explain it?
Uh, Great question. I would call it, I actually had this discussion with a cold plunge expert earlier today. I would say it's about 95%. And the reason I say that is, um, where I'm kind of pulling that number from is, generally I don't think about it or feel it. It will be those
Okay.
occasions where, say, for example, Scott, you're putting on your socks in the morning, and that feeling of like the friction
Yeah.
rubbing against your skin is like, okay, so we're not 100% there. We're close, but we're not 100% there. And maybe it will be 95% forever. I'm not really sure.
But still, it's a hell of a lot better than the 40% you were at, right? The 70% that you were. The fact that these therapies are working. So let's go back a little bit, explain the therapies because we had a quick discussion about the vasodilation of vessels and how this all works, right? Because you want to be able to stimulate good blood coming in, bad blood going out. Like, walk me through a little bit about the differences and what happens physically with cold plunge and then heat and the sauna. How does that work together to make this success? And the reason why I'm asking, because we're going to dive into what is so unique about drip and what makes it the premier place in Cleveland. Again, the only two of them in the entire North American continent. It's kind of cool to think you have this special therapy or this special opportunity right here in Cleveland. So let's get a framework of what happens and how it all works.
Gotcha. So I will tell you kind of the first realization that I had in terms of what these two modalities were potentially doing and how they seem to be helping me, because there wasn't a clinical study on that, at least that I've found, on Finnish sauna and ice bathing, or what you might also hear termed as contrast therapy, with respect to nerve damage. But
Okay.
but 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 what I do know about what both of those modalities do at a high level is you're experiencing a stress, and we can talk about this more, but these are both hormetic stressors. So is exercise. Exercise is a form of hormesis, or a hormetic stress. So what that means is, it's a stress that your body historically has experienced. And over
Hmm.
time, it has basically has hardwired, I would describe it as hardwired, inbuilt mechanisms or adaptations to be able to deal with those stresses. So people have lived in cold climates and
Hmm.
survived for centuries. They've lived in very, very hot climates and done the same. And that leads to adaptations that are really profound. And there's a lot of science behind the detail, and we can go into some of the detail. But for me, the first realization that I had was, okay, if I get in an ice bath, your body wants to protect your core temperature. So what does it do? It takes that blood from your extremities, your fingers and your toes, your arms and legs, and it brings it into your core because the core is what it wants to protect.
Hmm.
It's a
Yeah.
basic, it's a basic biological mechanism. So what happens in the sauna? So in a very hot Finnish sauna, your body's still trying to do the same thing. It's trying to protect your core and keep your body temperature within a normal range. So how it does that is the opposite. It flows
Pushes out.
blood to the extremities, pushes it out, and tries to shed heat. So what you basically have there is a pump. So you
Yeah.
have vasoconstriction with cold plunge or cold therapy, and you have vasodilation with uh, heat therapy. So you're pulling it in, you're pushing it out,
Pushing
you're
it
pulling
out.
it in, you're pushing it out.
So, Andrew, do you do a cold then a hot, hot then a cold? How does it work, and how close to each other is each session of therapy?
Great question. So the science is not, I would argue the science isn't completely baked around that topic. But if we look at, for example, what the Finns and the Nordics were doing for hundreds, if not thousands of years, they were generally uh, enjoying the sauna and then jumping in a body of cold water to 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 cool down. So it's
Same.
heat then cold. Um, that's certainly my preference is heat versus cold.
Okay.
And partly that's a preference, partly it's because the thing you've always got to be careful of with the body is your skin in many senses acts as your thermometer. So that's the signal to the rest of the body to say, okay, okay, what environment are we in here? What's actually happening? And and what I've noticed
Good point.
is if I go into a cold plunge, I've tested many different things. If I go into a cold plunge and then I go into a hot sauna, I can't feel that sauna the same for a while. So I kind
Oh,
of don't
wow. Okay.
great signal. And what's really important with any hormetic stress, and think of this as exercise. Everyone knows exercise, or everyone knows going out in the sun on the first 80-degree day of the year and potentially staying out too long getting sunburned, right?
Yeah.
Both form both forms of hormesis. What what we intuitively know, for example, with exercise is it is a stress. It's putting a stress on our body, and our body adapts. It strengthens anything
Yeah.
from bone density to uh, muscle fibers to joints, ligaments, tendons. It just knows how to respond to that stress. And what happens is your body's essentially going, oh, he's not going to stop doing this. Well, if he's not going to stop doing this, we have to, what are we going to do? We'll grow larger muscles because this guy won't stop doing arm curls. So that's the only way we stave off injury.
Okay. So
But
this. Okay. No, this is really good because it's interesting. Um, you don't get when you're working out, you think you're weak because you're not doing anything, but you're actually making yourself stronger because of the stress. When you read a book, you think you're stupid because you don't know what you're reading, but then you're smarter for the endeavor, right? The stress that you're talking about isn't harmful. It's actually beneficial because it's leading you to a success, which is I'm going to either heal you or I'm going to make you stronger, whatever the case may be. And this is really a great analogy for any business owner out there that's realizing I'm in so much stress right now. Okay, is it good stress or is it bad stress? right? If you're following this path of bad stress, okay, you need to change your mindset and you need to change the things you're working on because clearly you're not getting better. You're just stressing out because you're not doing the right things. This kind of stress, as relative to the success that you've seen, it's illustrative of if you do the right things, you become stronger, you become smarter, you become braver to do things that you haven't done before. And because of all those things, despite feeling you were getting worse or you felt incompetent, you're realizing that the stress you put your body, your mind through, it's making you a stronger individual. I love that analogy for business owners because no matter what your stress level is as a business owner, there's a way through it. And you're a really good example of the bad times are not the end times. It's just a matter of what stress am I going to put myself through to become better. And I love that analogy.
Yeah, and there's two, if not more, really good aspects of what you're talking about, Scott, which is really embracing discomfort, right?
Mhm.
It's not, again, as I was doing, running towards comfort with my easy consulting career. It's embracing discomfort. So hormetic stressors not only force adaptation. So yes, you feel weak when you're working out and you can barely, you're going to failure. So
Yeah.
it's failure, right? But your body looks at that as, okay, this is something we can respond to and we can strengthen and adapt.
We'll figure
And
it out. Yeah.
yeah, and it's the same with those other hormetic stressors. Now, there is a point, and think of it like a roller coaster. So let me get this right in terms of the left or right. So you want to go up that roller coaster. You do not want to fall down the other side. With hormesis, it is a curve. It's an upside down U, and you always want to ride the upside of that curve. If you go too far, and again, you inherently know this with exercise, you can overtrain. If I run
Yeah.
2 miles a week and I decide, oh, it'd be great to run 45 miles today, that's probably not a good idea because I don't have the level of adaptation to do that.
Yeah.
I could have, but it's a gradual process. So 100% on embracing discomfort to the point at which you're on the right side of that curve and you're getting the right dose of stress. And you'll inherently know that with exercise, right? So
Yeah.
nobody and you'll see this on social media. Folks will come out with these protocols, and they are based on clinical studies, but typically based on averages. So, for example, you should spend 19 minutes in a sauna. Well, that was an average from a study. I would argue that's not a prescription, and again, bring that back to a hormetic stress, with exercise. If if somebody jumped up in social media and said, based on clinical studies, Scott, you should exercise once every other day for 15 and a half minutes. You'd be like, no, I can do more than that. I think I'll do what suits
Yeah.
me because you're at a level where you understand the stress, you understand what going too far looks like, you know what it feels
Yeah.
like, and you know what getting to the sweet spot feels like, and you now have agency. You have control over that. And I think everyone can get there with with heat and cold in exactly the same way.
I love that. Now you said there were two things, embrace discomfort. And what was the second one?
So, and this is kind of a quirk of cold plunge and ice bathing in terms of how stress hits. Um, and it also relates to the fact that with hormetic stressors specifically, you have kind of different things going on, not just in the body, but also in the brain. So, for example, in a Finnish sauna, you'll feel great for the first 10, maybe 15 minutes. Like this, it's the most amazing feeling. It feels amazing. At some point, your body wants to signal to you, your core temperature is rising. This is kind of, you sure you want to keep doing this? And that's the point where norepinephrine's getting released in the brain. And how you and I feel that is, wait, how long have I been in here? Is this enough? You start looking at your watch. You're like, maybe I've been in long enough. Do I need to drink more? It's your body's
Yeah.
trying to tell you you're getting, that roller coaster. You're getting to a certain point in that roller
Yeah.
coaster. Now, what's really interesting about cold plunge and stress and busy executives, Scott, is that unlike sauna, where that stress hits you later, it's immediate in a cold plunge. It
Yeah.
is the very second you get in, it is a shock and you gasp. It's your body's immediately trying to take in oxygen. Your heart rate does elevate, and I think that's really important for people to understand. And then it's the goal of trying to get that back down again. Now, what is that process of getting that back down again? That is, in the simplest sense, top-down control. Now, what happens to us in the work environment, Scott? You're
Mm.
stressed all the time, but we're not being chased by lions, but yet we have this constant
Feeling.
chronic stress, constantly elevated cortisol that we never we never seem to get away from. So there's two things about that. Once we're not meant to experience stress continuously. It's
No.
incredibly unhealthy, but it, without that top-down control, we've all known it from the work environments, especially in very stressful periods, or you change jobs and it's not quite working, it's tougher. It it's an agony in a sense. And what happens in a cold plunge is, and I've filmed this live with an overlaid reading from a heart rate monitor. Your heart rate shoots up, and you've got two options. You can either learn top-down control real quick real quick, or you can get the hell out. You have two
Okay.
options. There's no luxury in this. So what happens is if you continue to do it and you train yourself, you find that you can go from a very elevated heart rate to actually bringing your heart rate down below where it was when you actually got into that cold plunge. So you can experience a
Wow.
real stress. This is a real stress because potentially if you stayed in too long, it would be damaging. Your body knows
Yeah.
this is the real real. This is not messing about. This is not, hey, I've got a report due tomorrow and I don't have three of my inputs. This
Yeah.
is,
This is real
no, this
life.
is kind of more life and death.
Yeah.
And 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 when you learn to control your mind like that, and what you're also learning is to do, back to your other point, Scott, do difficult things. So and I'm no neurosurgeon, but the anterior mid-cingulate cortex is the part of the brain that's associated with willpower, that's associated with doing difficult things, and you can grow it in a similar way that you can grow a bicep.
Exercise practice. Yeah. No, it makes complete sense. I've said this before. The brain, the mind is the single most powerful tool anybody has at their disposal. Whether they choose to use it for good or bad, I don't know, but it is by far the single most powerful tool we have at our disposal. I wanted to touch base on what is it at Drip that makes it so unique, because we've talked a lot about different things, and I want to make sure that people in the audience understand what you're doing because it is so unique and what makes it special. Talk about the different rooms and temperatures that each room has, how you have things set up between the cold plunge and the sauna, so people have an understanding of when I get a chance to go to Drip, this is what I'm in for. This is the expectation I would have because this is the experience. So walk us through that.
100%. So let's take the two obstacles that I found on my journey, Scott, with cold and heat. So with cold, Uh, I went to a facility that had one cold plunge, drove about an hour. It was great. It was kind of as warm as a cold plunge can be, 59 degrees. I was shivering like crazy, got out, felt amazing, said to the owners, hey, if I keep coming back here and I get adapted to the cold, can we start to lower it? And the answer was, no, dear, this is the temperature. So then I started to think about, well, okay, why is that? So is this commercial convenience versus what suits the customer? And I think maybe it partially was, but there's a more important constraint with cold plunge, which is the specific heat capacity of water. So you cannot go from a 55-degree body of water to 45 with like 80 gallons of water
Yeah,
in 10.
quickly.
It's like a day. So what happens is you're constrained literally by the number of cold plunges that you have. So that kind of fed into, okay, well, how do we solve this problem? We solve it with dollars and multiplication. How do you solve having to
Hmm.
give people different levels of hormetic stress in a gym? You have a dumbbell rack with different weights. If somebody needs 10 pounds, they get 10 pounds. If somebody needs 30, they get 30. Same thing with cold plunge. It seemed to make sense to solve that with, frankly, multiplication and dollars. Now, when it comes to sauna, the issue I had was I couldn't find a single finished sauna. Plenty of infrared saunas, which are around
Hmm.
140 degrees. It's a much lower level of heat stress.
Okay.
So, apart from anything else, not to get into the subject, it's a longer process. So, my issue was I couldn't find one. And as I was going through that process, I was thinking, ooh, what if I catch the car? Like, what if I do find one? Do I have to be naked? Do we beat each other about with branches like they do
We don't
in
want that.
the movie? Like, I don't feel comfortable anymore. So that barrier with sauna to me became it was kind of a psychological and a cultural barrier. And I
Yeah.
don't like barriers to entry. And when I started to talk to, especially my wife's friends about this idea, they immediately went to the same questions. Oh, am I going to be with other people? Or is this
Hmm.
private? Am I like, do I have to be naked or can I wear my bathing suit? And that's where we came up with the idea of, well, we solve both these problems by having, in this case, 7 private rooms, each one with a finished sauna, with a cold plunge, if somebody wants to cold plunge as well, and a shower. So it's a private environment. You book it for 40 minutes, and you can choose, in the case of cold plunge, the temperature or the level of stress that suits you. So whether that is 59 degrees, 55 degrees, all the way down to 33 with ice on the top, you
Okay.
take your choice, and to me, it's the only way to solve the problem for the customer versus trying to solve the problem for the operator. Solving the problems for the operator is very easy. You get an infrared
Right.
sauna, it's 110 volt, you plug it into the wall. You don't have to worry about extensive HVAC venting. You don't have to worry about drainage. It's
Right. This
you can
happens.
plug in a toaster oven the same way. And
We're not putting people in toaster ovens. We're putting them in really fine and finely engineered saunas. I want to make sure I clarify. 7 individual private rooms that has a capacity of both sauna, shower, and cold plunge are all in one. All goes in.
all in one.
Okay.
So if you want to book a room, go in, enjoy your sauna, enjoy a cold plunge, shower, and leave, you can. If you want to sit and relax and talk to other people in the community, there'd be approximately 1,000 square foot lounge. And I mean true lounge, not a waiting area. It will be a
Hmm.
mid-century modern style or Scandinavian style design. Just
This is
sit
so
and
cool.
relax and just hang out.
It's such a cool concept. Andrew, when you looking to open the doors?
I give the same answer every week, Scott. 4 weeks. No, seriously, I think we're about 4 weeks away. We have the, I have to make things difficult, Scott. So
It's all right.
most
That's
people,
part of the stress though, right? That's part of the good stress.
it is, and I kind of like a challenge sometimes too much, but I think we have 54 walls. I couldn't just paint the walls. So there's no latex paint on any wall in the facility. It will all
Okay.
be traditional lime paint or Venetian plaster, which are also natural, also thousands of years old, just like heat and cold therapy.
Yeah.
That's a very laborious process, and I had to work with a specific manufacturer in California on specific shades of blue, et cetera, et cetera. Um,
The thing that I find spectacular about what you're doing is you're doing it right. You're not cutting a corner. And your comment of what's right for the owner, easy to fix. What's right for the consumer, that's the target that you want to hit. So I appreciate what you're doing. Everybody will have access to your information. I'm going to put it in the description below when it shows up on LinkedIn, when it shows up on YouTube. So all that information will be available. This has been a great conversation, Andrew. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk us through this and really showcase your challenges are different than what I've normally had to talk about. And I didn't want to talk about business challenges. I wanted to talk about the journey that you took from your own situation discovery, learning. Okay, now I discover what I need, and I'm going to go forward with it because it's not only going to solve problems that I like to solve, it's going to help solve problems for other people. And that is what I think is a great mindset for a business owner trying to trying to attract people to what you do. And it's a beautiful story. So I want to thank you for that.
Hey, thank you. And one last note out there for the busy, stressed, sometimes stressed executives like us.
Yeah,
Heat stress plus cold stress equals no stress. And I really
love
do
it.
mean that. Give it a try.
Perfect. Andrew, thank you so much for being on the show. We'll talk to you and everybody else on the next episode of Legacy Leaders. Thanks.
Thanks, Scott.